Good evening. Welcome to the March 13th school board meeting. We will call the meeting to order. We're going to start with individual student growth recognitions.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out this evening. Sometimes there are a set of steps here. Do y'all know that? Sometimes there are, right? I don't dream that. I'll be right back.
That first step would have been a doozy. Poor thing. Yeah, that would have been awful.
And we're back. All right, good evening. One of our favorite times each month during our business meetings are to recognize, the time is to recognize our students of the month at Central 9 and celebrate individual student growth. So if I call your name, please come forward and congratulations. These are the students from February and March. Alicia Perkins, is Alicia here? She was recognized in work-based learning. Krista Ennis, landscape and horticulture. Gavin Wilson, project Lead the Way, biomedical science. Madison Dirth, work-based learning. And Kristen Morley in nursing. Please join me in congratulating these students and their parents and their teachers. Thank you all so much.
Okay, we'll move to the consent agenda. Are there any public comments? No? Any questions, any additions?
Yeah, President Nelson, we do have a retirement. Needham Elementary, Jill Snyder, first grade teacher after 36 years, is going to retire at the end of this school year.
That's great. Congratulations to her. Okay.
I wanted to make a couple of comments. Can you hear me now?
Nope.
Hello, there we go. On our cybersecurity insurance renewal, our current policy expires the 19th of this month. Our agents solicited proposals from 3 different carriers, one being our existing carrier, which is Coalition. However, for the same coverage, they increased their pricing from $28,000 to $50,000. So our agents recommended going with Cowbell. Their proposal was very small print, $28,000 for the same coverage. There is one caveat though. Mr. Sprout and his staff will need to work on MFA for multi-factor authentication for his IT administrative staff. And once that is in place, we'll go back to the $1 million cyber, the ransom. That's the limit for the ransom. So that should be done within the next couple of weeks or so, and we'll be good to go. So just wanted to explain the details behind that.
Okay. Anything else? Motion?
I'll move for approval.
And
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the consent agenda passes. Okay, superintendent reports, legislative update.
Yeah, we just thought at this time we'd bring to a few of the bills that are before us for us to think about. I know ISBA is doing a great job of each week sending out updates. But there are a few that are on our radars that we thought we would talk about both to the board and the community. Just to make sure everybody aware, we have probably about 6 more weeks in the session as they conclude, the end of April, 1st of May. And so first we'll start now with Mrs. Gross on one or two that she's watching.
So I have a few that affect the assessed value and the property tax side of the house. One is a potential cap on the growth in the referendum. The proposal is to put a 3% cap on that. If you recall, we have a 5% cap on the operating funds right now, so it would be similar to that. So that's not great. That's how we fund our teacher increases and support staff increases, so it will have a pretty significant impact. But the good news is it is only being proposed for 1 year. Another proposal is to lower the circuit breaker from 1% to, I think it's 0.95, 0.975, kind of a gradual increase back to the 1% to give taxpayers an even larger break as far as the significant increases that we're seeing in assessed value. And then the third and probably the most impactful one is for debt service. Any district that has a 80-cent or more debt service tax rate, which ours is at 98 cents, would be required to go to referendum for any borrowings. So for instance, the bond that we just went after at the end of 22, the $17 million bond, that would automatically go to a referendum. So not sure, there are mixed feelings on whether or not that will go through as is or get amended or not go through at all. It's hard to say at this point. So we are preparing kind of behind the scenes what that might look like. After the retreat, we talked to Baker Tilly about running some numbers and adjusting our debt service plan just in case those things pass through. So we will keep you posted.
A couple bills that we're watching on the curriculum side, or at least that impact our teachers directly, and I think we talked about a couple of these last month as well. These are still alive. There's the deregulation bill with regards to how much training we require our teachers to participate in year after year after year. Connected to that bill is also the piece about discussion and faculty evaluations, teacher evaluations. So waiting to see how that piece falls out. Textbook rental is another one I know we've been talking about for some time. That was in the governor's agenda originally. We don't yet know how that's going to appear in some of the budget conversations. We've seen a couple of different things. There are some we like better than others. So we'll see how that falls out and what's included in that and how that impacts families. Not quite enough information, I would say, yet from anything that I have read on that particular front, but we're keeping an eye on that as well. Library books is a hot topic right now. The Senate version did pass through the Senate, and so there's a House committee version as well, looking at how are they defining libraries. Is that just our media center libraries? Is that classroom libraries? What needs to be inventoried online? All of our K through 12 libraries are inventoried online, but what is the extent of that? What does harmful mean? Lots of conversations around definitions and what that might mean in our school libraries. So we talked with FCTA about this, the early versions of this bill today, but again, in many cases, we're still waiting for some of that language to be solidified. And then I would say, finally, as far as my biggies, is the whole conversation around the science of reading. You all know we've been adopted into the literacy cadre for the state. We are in the second cohort. We've been working through OG training, Orton Gillingham training for all of our kindergarten and first grade teachers, which is part of that science of reading, really thinking about the resources we use in the training we provide for our teachers. And so really watching what the state is going to expect of school districts along that particular line.
So Dr. Worland, on the libraries, we have a process now. If any parent sees any book has some objection to that book, there's a process that they can go through, right?
That is correct.
So do you see a major change in our process from what you know now?
What we know now is that if the bills pass as they're currently written, you have to have a process. I don't know at this point enough to know if IDOE will then create administrative guidelines that require us to use a certain process.
Okay.
At this point, you have to have one. We do have one. We also now have a thorough collection development process as well to be more proactive on our selection end as well.
So I would recommend that whether that bill passes or not, that at a later date, at a board meeting, that we bring that here as a discussion topic, so the public knows our process that we have. Remind them that we have it, and if you have any concerns, here's the steps to follow.
And we also made sure that we included language like that in all of the handbooks last year, so that parents would know there is a process.
Good.
The process is outlined then in our policy, our board policies.
Thank you.
We have elementary handbooks coming up in a few months, and we'll just tie those two together as we move forward. I would add also on Senate Bill 12, that is actually the library bill. One other thing that is really coming to the forefront is the ability that if a book were to be harmful or have violence or other aspects deemed inappropriate in a school setting, that the media center specialist could be prosecuted, and it would be a level 6 felony, up to 2.5 years in prison and $10,000 fine. Obviously, that does make everybody stand up and say, what's going on? I had the chance on Thursday this last week to meet with the House of Representative person who's carrying the same bill to talk a little bit about that. And really the concern is making sure we have a clear process. Some schools don't have a process for checking books in and also getting books out. And the state's saying, no matter if I'm in Goshen or South Bend or in Franklin, Indiana, we want to make sure that everything is clear and concise. So that's one of the things that's coming to the forefront. But want to make sure everybody's aware of that one. I know Emily Silverman, our media specialist, is very concerned about that, and everyone would be. And so that's something that would also be put in there. And right now, there's immunity for schools and libraries, and they're basically asking not to have immunity is really what it comes down to. So that's one that we're watching. Another one pertains to the violent, aggressive behavior of students. That's been a bill that we've really been partnering with the State House Council to try to make some language adjustments. And on Thursday, I'm going to testify at the State House over that bill. And that's to increase funding and opportunities. And also to make it people aware it's not just the school's responsibility. It is everybody's, the community responsibility in this journey. And so they're talking about community centers and mental health aspects away from schools. And I'm a strong advocate for that as well. So on Thursday, I will be up testifying on our behalf, but also on the superintendent's behalf in that space. One praise with regard to the budget bill, the Dolly Parton Imagination Library that we have here in Johnson County that Dr. Christofouli has been a part of, actually was put into as a line item for all the kids in the state of Indiana. And that if you did hear Governor Holcomb talk, he talked about a couple things, and that was one of them. It did make it in as a line item. One other thing is a line item that Tina and I are watching, and that is the 45% rule. And if you remember any new money that comes to us from the state of Indiana, 45% that goes to teachers and teacher salaries. There's been a conversation through superintendents and IASBO to include benefits into that, and that would maybe move that number up to 62% of the new monies, which we think that would be appropriate. That conversation is ongoing. I do think you're going to see it shift to include benefits The other thing is language. What is a teacher? Because right now you must teach halftime in front of kids to allow Tina to run the calculations to be considered in that. Well, that means that our school counselors, our instructional coaches, people that are our teachers, they're certificated, don't get counted. They're considered more on the administrative side. And we're asking for that, maybe to have a consistent definition of a teacher, because there is a definition the teacher has for collective bargaining, and we're just saying, what about using that? So those are some things that we're watching right now. We are continuing our advocacy in terms of providing, that funding resource to get it to teachers. It would be great, Governor Holcomb's talked about getting the average salary to $60,000 for teachers. Obviously we hit average, we have extremes at both ends. We want to continue to see our bottom end teacher, that entry level spot, continue to move forward, and we are looking at that. So those are some bills that we are watching. We'll continue to keep you in the loop, but I wanted to make sure the community also knew that we were involved in these conversations. If anyone has a question about them, Representative Green is in the House for us, and Senator Walker represents Franklin, and we both have a relationship with them. If there's things that people want to see or they want to share, please reach out to them. Senator Walker does have a bill with regard to referenda, and if you know that there's a lot of language in there that people want to see put into the, what are you asking for in the referendum and those different things. So he is bringing forward that, and one of the things he's added is a renewal language referendum, which maybe could impact us in the future. So that's a good thing. Once again, it's that clarity of the community that they're trying to look at. The last thing probably in regard to you is the partisan election bill. Would you have to declare Republican or Democrat in the space? And that one is still hanging in a couple of different bills with language around that. And so we'll continue to watch what that looks like. Any other questions for us on legislative updates? Mr. Young, are you watching any other that we don't know about that we didn't highlight?
You pretty well covered it.
All right, thanks.
But we've got a long, long way to go in session.
Yeah, and I would also highlight one other thing that's non-school, and that has to do with property taxes that are coming out. We're going to all get our bills here in the next few weeks, and I know the legislators are concerned because AV has gone up throughout the state of Indiana. When AV goes up, that also means your property taxes are going to go up, and there is some concern. That's why the bills that Ms. Gross brought forward today are really tax bills that would weigh into that. But that's something to be on the horizon. And I know that the legislators are very much aware of that impact that's coming to the state of Indiana. Thank you.
Thank you for the updates. Okay, we'll do the summer project updates. I think that's Jeff.
Good evening. There we go. So this is the time of year I come and talk to you about what fun projects we're going to have going on over the summer. And this is a big year. As you know, we did a bond issuance in 21, and we're still finishing up some of the last few projects there. And we just did a bond issuance of $16 million in the end of last year, and those projects are all heading off in full steam. So I'm just going to hit the highlights of that for you now. As you know, continuous improvement is one of our guiding principles, and we always go through a process of working with our experts to identify those most critical needs and spend our money wisely. And so these projects flow out of analysis that Lancer Beebe did for us. Schmidt & Associates is now helping us with those projects, and STR does a lot of consulting for us. On the heating and air conditioning side and mechanical systems, Creekside and Northwood are both in need of a complete HVAC overhaul in those buildings, and so those projects are launching this summer, and so we're excited about that, and that's going to just put us in much better shape in those two buildings. The middle school chiller system needs an overhaul. We're going to do that. And then the middle school's pool air handler is really dilapidated and is in need of work. We've been putting that project off, limping along for a long time, and that one's finally come to the top. Again, the theme on these projects are things that we've deferred and held off as long as we possibly could. Not on this list because it's just not going to come up this summer. We are replacing the chillers at the high school. That's going to be another big project. With supply side, that's not going to happen until next year. building exteriors and pavement, we're going to do masonry, maintenance and repairs at several schools and our administration building maintenance center and transportation center. That is currently out for bid. We're doing pavement maintenance and repairs at all of those places. That's an area where, as I really looked at the recommendations from STR, and we compare the cost of making fixes today versus pushing those repairs down the line. We're kind of at a point where if we don't spend this kind of money now, we're going to have an even bigger reckoning ahead of us. So that number is a little bigger than I was hoping it was going to be, but I think it's going to avoid additional costs down the line. Webb and Northwood both have roof areas that will be replaced. For Webb, it's a full roof. That is another project that has been on the docket since before I arrived in my current role 6 years ago. Gabe Hart and his team has done a great job holding that off with maintenance and regular repairs, but it's time. So Northwood has had about half of its roof repaired in the last 10 years, so this is the other half of that, and that again will then position that building to be in good shape for a bit. The other projects we've been planning for and anticipating on the facilities improvement and equipment side is replacing the artificial turf at the football stadium. AstroTurf Company tells us we have the oldest installation in the state, which is kind of a polite way of saying it's worn out, guys, it's time. Yeah, that project's going to start right as soon as we're done with track and our graduation. So looking forward to having that squared away. We're going to do whiteboards in all of our elementaries except for Union. We're still having conversations about Union. Union already has whiteboards in their classrooms, so they're in good shape there. Tennis court resurfacing, and then playground updates and repairs. We have inspectors out for us this week, really looking at the details of our playgrounds and looking for where do we need to make repairs and where are opportunities to make improvements. And in particular, we're looking at accessibility for our playgrounds. We're still waiting on doors to deliver for Union classrooms, and so we're waiting anxiously for that project to move ahead. These aren't our projects per se, but they kind of are certainly projects we track and are affected by. The West Side Regional Sewer Interceptor Project will start this summer and bring a sewer main down through the high school campus, and that will start soon after school starts or is over. The roundabout at Commerce and Simon, and that art installation is also going to happen this summer, and we have some business on the agenda tonight about that we'll talk about in a minute. US 31 is another project that I don't know will affect us so much, at least over the summertime, but it is something, of course, we are tracking and paying attention to, and we'll, as traffic flow patterns and phasing of that project proceed, we'll certainly be planning with Mr. Dickinson on how that affects our operations and busing in particular. With that, that's my report. That's a busy summer ahead. There are other projects that are kind of somewhere in the pipeline, but not quite ready to announce yet, but we are working diligently to get projects moving on those bond issuances. Be glad to take any questions.
Do you have a good line of sight of what that US 31 corridor is going to do to, you just mentioned it and I just thought I'd ask if you know, like timing and how we might be able to do busing. Maybe you don't know those details, and that's fine.
We really don't. We know they're starting at the south and they're going to move up through, but then until we see really what the lane restrictions are going to be and which flow patterns are going to be restricted, we're kind of waiting for more information before we can really react to it.
What's the timing of it, do you know?
Well, it starts this year and then it's like a 3-year project.
On April 24th, we're going to meet with the City Council for a joint board meeting. That's actually one of the topics we're going to have come into play. Also, Mr. Sewell, before you sit down, we had someone reach out and ask about tennis court repairs and resurfacing, and especially with regard to the adaptive program that we have in the summer. Can you tell us, we see you're using both CBIS and the high school to get repaired. Are they going to be done in time for summer activities, or what's the schedule?
I asked for that schedule so we can work around it. I think we'll be able to schedule around it. The contractor, barring some problem with the way, we're still negotiating the quote, and
Okay.
they put some stipulations on their quote that have kind of hung us up a little bit. But we think they will do like 5 courts and then 5 courts, so we'll always have a space available if we can't just flat avoid those particular weeks. So I think we'll be able to work around it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sewell. Moving along to action items. Are there any public comments? Okay, thank you. The next item is the Northwood Elementary principal.
I'm really excited for this one. At this time, I would like to recommend that Mrs. Carly Hoagland be named the Northwood Elementary principal for the 22 and 23 school year and beyond. Carly comes to us from Clark Pleasant, where she is the assistant to the principal, serving in a capacity there that takes on deanship and some other things. But prior to that, she was our instructional coach at CBIS and at Union. She was a Northwood teacher. She did her student teaching at Northwood, so she's coming back home. We had a rigorous process to get to this space. We did talk to the teachers. We talked to support staff and community members about what they wanted to see in their next principal, and Carly checked all those boxes. Dr. Warland led the first round of interviews where we had teachers, support staff, and parents on that committee. In the second round, it passed over to me, and I'm making the final selection to bring Mrs. Hoagland forward as the next principal at Northwood Elementary upon your approval.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
At this time, Mrs. Hoagland, would you mind to step up to the microphone? Congratulations, but also give you a chance to say a few words both to the board and the community.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited. This is wonderful to be back home. Just like Dr. Clendenning said, Northwood is a really special place to me. That's where I completed my student teaching, but many years of teaching as well. And I can't wait to continue. Northwood has always had a very strong legacy for a strong sense of community, high expectations for student achievement, and I'm really looking forward to continuing those efforts, working with our staff to just continue that strong sense of community, working together, collaboration, and building trust within that building, and I think just continuing those great things that all of our teachers are doing in that building. And so I could not be more excited to be here, and thank you very much.
You know, Mrs. Hoagland, we know that it's not just you. You have a whole family behind you. I think they're probably really proud tonight, but also that will support you in this journey. So at this time, would you like to introduce them?
Yeah, absolutely. So with me is my husband, Joe Hoagland, and then our 2 boys, Henry Hoagland. He will be at Custer Baker next year, and Graham will be in 1st grade.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your mom and your wife with us on this next journey. We know that it's a lot to lead a building, and it takes a whole community, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next will be the Cumberland and Roundabout transfer. Mr. Sewell.
Yes, so you may recall a board meeting or 2 ago, you approved the release of property to support this project for that roundabout project. Mr. Young has been helping us work through all of the property transfers related to that. And the last little piece was waiting on the trustee to release that parcel so that we could then transfer it. We finally got word this week that they will do that, take that step tomorrow. So what I'd suggest, and maybe Mr. Young can help me.
And that's absolutely correct. A number of meetings ago, well, let me back up even further. Where the roundabout is intended to be installed is land, obviously, that's on the high school campus. That entire tract of land, now keep this in mind because it's going to be important later, That entire tract of land that was purchased, okay, for the high school is pledged to secure the bonds that were sold to finance the high school. So as such, it is mortgaged property under the control of the trustee. In order to make that property free and clear of any encumbrances, which the city of Franklin requires as a condition precedent to any donation, it is necessary to obtain the release of the trustee and to convey the property from the building corporation, who now owns it, that's who pledged it as mortgage property, to the school corporation, so that the school board can ultimately make the conveyance to the city of Franklin. The building corporation does not have the authority to do anything with the real estate that it owns, except deed it back to the school corporation. And that is why it's got to come from the building corporation to the school corporation and then to the city of Franklin. Jane Herndon, bond counsel at Ice Miller, and I have been working with the trustee now for about 3 or 4 months, trying to obtain a release of that little piece of property. I don't understand why it took so long. Well, I do. The trustee thought that we had bond insurance, which if we did would have required the consent of the insurer to release property. It's much more complicated than it ought to be. And so we finally were able to convince the trustee that no, there is no bond insurance on that. So the trustee has finally agreed to do the release. It has been promised that they're going to get it to me tomorrow. Assuming they do, I will record the release first, then I will record the deed from the building corporation to the school corporation. A few meetings ago, and this is back to where I started, the school corporation determined that that land was not needed for school purposes and authorized its conveyance to the city of Franklin. So signing the actual documents of conveyance from the school corporation to the city of Franklin has already been approved. We just don't have the land back yet. So assuming I'd get that release tomorrow, we will record the release, then we'll record the deed, school corporation will own it. At that point, Dr. Clendending, or President Nelson if she's available, it doesn't matter, can execute the conveyance to the city of Franklin without further action from the school board. Because that act, that ultimate act of conveyance, has already been approved. It's these steps leading up to it that haven't yet been accomplished. Questions?
So I guess that's a way of saying that was an unnecessary agenda item, so I apologize for that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I guess the agenda item then is unnecessary. There's no action tonight?
No action tonight.
Yeah.
Do we need to take action
No,
tonight?
since it's an action item, I'd go ahead and make a motion authorizing transfer of the real estate to the city of Franklin upon receipt of same by the school corporation. And there'll be something in the record that shows that action was taken on an agenda action item.
Do we need to appoint someone that can do Dr. Clendending?
Yes, if you want to, that motion can also authorize Dr. Clendending to execute all documents necessary to effect the conveyance. Yeah, absolutely.
Would it hurt to mention that it's a donation?
Yeah, I mean, I assume this
think
is
that
being
was-
donated. It's a benefit to the school to fix that intersection. Okay. So I'd say go ahead and do a motion authorizing Dr. Clendending to execute the documents and that the conveyance will be free of charge as a donation.
Can I make a motion?
And I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. And the policy, second readings.
President Nelson, there are no changes, and so we just ask that you approve the policies that we articulated last week, from policy number 0131.1 to policy 8600.
I move to approve. Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, moving along to discussion items. Donation agreement. This is 31, Jeff Sewell.
Yes, I was expecting Mr. Newport or somebody from the city to be here, but I'll take a shot at explaining what this is. At the corner of Commerce and 31, there is a piece of trail that needs to connect with another planned trail or sidewalk. And to do that, they need a little tiny corner of property that we own at that intersection where the high school sign sits. And so this is the request from the city asking if we will convey that little piece to enable the connection of the trail. And again, that would they're asking whether that would be donated or if they should prepare an offer for that property. Can you pull that up, Natalie? It's like 0.0 something. It's very small.
Yeah, I've seen the legal, it's extremely tiny. Let me speak to that. As I discussed with you, the donation, or the donation of the roundabout right-of-way, I said that that was on land purchased by the school corporation. And I said that'd be important to think about later. The land where the sign sits, together with the extension of Commerce Drive, which has been donated to the city. The city accepted that road. That was acquired through condemnation, not by purchase. That land is not securing the bond issues. Okay, the only thing securing the bonds, the high school bonds, is what the school purchased. The school purchased that land, but not through an agreement. It got the land by way of eminent domain proceeding in court. So we don't have to deal with the trustee on that issue. However, you do need to adopt a resolution authorizing dedicating that very small piece, and that resolution will be for you to consider at the next meeting. Tonight is simply the discussion. I agree with Mr. Sewell. I may even have the legal description in my file. I do, I believe. If you can bear with me a moment, I can tell you how much.
While Mr. Young looks for that, this item will be placed on also the joint city council board meeting, as it really pertains to both of us, and that way they can fulfill any questions that they might have, or we can ask them questions about the project and everything, because it really ties into that 31 corridor. And I do think everything should come back to them in this conversation as it pertains to us.
Yeah, it's 0.002 acre, so it's very, very small.
We are talking about 0.002 acres. 2/100ths of an acre. Might be the size of one of those tables, a little bigger.
Quite small.
So thank you.
Thank you.
And so that little bit of land we would donate to the city, but that'll come back as a resolution next month?
A resolution on April the 24th.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yes. Since we discussed it here, it will not be on the regular school board meeting, we'll do it on the joint city council one.
Okay. All right, public comment on discussion items. Okay. Any board comments?
I'd just like to welcome Mrs. Hoagland.
And administrative comments?
I have one item. At the board retreat, we talked a little bit about stipends for our primary therapy dog handlers. They put a lot of time and energy into making sure our dogs are well taken care of and well trained and disciplined and ready for each school day. We were proposing to make that an annual $3,000 stipend, paid twice a year in $1,500 increments. So we're proposing that we go forward with that. We can go ahead and add that as an ECA up to a year. So we'll fold that into the negotiation process for the 23-24 school year. Thank you.
On that, as we look to the CBA, it's about that time again that we need to meet. and begin talking about kind of next steps, especially with regard to the budget and things we're moving forward. So I'll be reaching out to, I think, Andy and Brian, who are on the committee, to see when we can have that conversation, and then move forward, because it will be upon us quickly.
Okay. Calendar of events.
Just wanted to remind everyone at my FCS Academy, March 15th, which is on Wednesday, we're going to talk about the extracurricular opportunities and student programming that we have. We do have Mr. Doty coming to talk about athletics. We're going to have, I think Mrs. Smith is going to be there to talk about Cub Academy. No? Cub Quest, the different programs we have in that. And some others, so that's a great thing. And then in April, we're actually going to take it on the road, and we're going to go to Union Elementary for the at my FCS Academy. Just kind of highlight Union and looking at the building as we kind of prepare for the future of what we're doing in terms of those conversations. So that's coming up. And then spring break starts on the 23rd. We do go through April the 3rd. Next year's spring break, I know Dr. Warland's already got a special event planned right after that. You want to talk just briefly about that to remind everybody?
Yes, quick reminder, April 8th of next year is the eclipse, and so we will not have school that day. We are actually attending the chamber meeting in April to learn more about what the community is planning. There are a series of events that will be happening potentially the weekend before and the day of, and so there will be lots of guests in Franklin, and so looking at ways that we can also partner with the city to help welcome others to our community. So it will be a busy, busy day, I think, in Franklin. I also wanted to add that kindergarten registration is tomorrow night in all 5 of our elementary buildings between 4 and 7. So for the board and for our community, if you have a student entering kindergarten, please come out and join us in the buildings tomorrow. I know we're all very excited to welcome our newest students.
And the last thing, if you saw at your table, these were consent agenda items that didn't make a posting, but just wanted to highlight the 8th graders in their annual mentoring program with going into 9th grade. They're going back to the Columbus Youth Camp, and then the National Guard will be here to come to a baseball game in honor of the armed services. And we've done those in the past, but then we didn't get in time to post them on the agenda, but that was before you, so those were on the consent as well. President Nelson, that's all we have. Thank you.
Okay. That being said, we'll move for adjournment.